Welcome to Catholic Views. I'm your host, Renee Kranz. On today's show, we are going to talk to Bishop Donald DeGrood about his beloved Uncle Donnie, who, if you know him at all, you maybe have heard him talk about Uncle Donnie, especially in his homilies. We're going to talk about him and about our older parishioners and how they can be prayer warriors for the rest of us and how they play a part in missionary discipleship. First, we have the lovely Dr. B.
Lovely.
Yes, I'm going to have
Quite
some biblical bites
indeed.
with Dr. B.
So, today's
Renee.
gospel reading, Renee. Do you remember what I said a couple weeks ago? Maybe it was last week. A couple weeks ago, I talked about how the first reading in the psalm usually corresponds somehow to the gospel.
Yep.
So we definitely see that pretty clearly in this Sunday's readings. The first reading from Isaiah and the gospel from the psalm. I'll just refresh your memory for you.
Yes, please.
So the gospel, another one of the parables involving banquets from Matthew, the latter chapters of Matthew's gospel. So this is the one where Jesus tells this parable of how a kingdom, the kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son, sent servants out, but they didn't come, sends them out again, and then some ignored the invitation. Others laid hold of his servants, mistreated and killed them. Can you imagine? Like, hey, come to the wedding. Come here. Like, what?
That is just, I don't get it.
So the king was enraged, sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. So there. That'll show you.
That's why we don't do that now.
Then he said to his servants, the feast is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy to come. Go out, therefore, into the main roads and invite to the feast whomever you find. The first servants went out into the streets and gathered all they found, bad and good alike, and the hall was filled with guests. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay.
When we back up to the first reading, Isaiah 25 begins this way. On this mountain, pop quiz, Renee, what mountain would that be? Would you guess?
Sinai?
Sinai.
Ooh,
Good
Bill.
guesses, both of you, but wrong. Jerusalem. Good. That was an excellent guess. Don't feel badly. It's okay.
I'm just glad you're as dumb as me, Bill.
Anytime.
Dumb and Dumber is a movie. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will provide for all peoples a feast of rich food and choice wines, juicy, rich food and pure choice wines. On this mountain, he will destroy the veil that veils all peoples, and the web that is woven over all nations. He will destroy death forever. The Lord God will wipe away the tears from every face.
That was the psalm.
That's Isaiah.
Okay. Oh, Isaiah.
25, first reading. Sorry. All peoples, all nations, every face. So let's bring those two together. For the people of Israel, the Old Testament is about who? Well, actually, for us too. Who's the Old Covenant with?
The Jews.
The Jews, the Israelites, generally the Jews. Okay, so in the gospel, so starting with Isaiah, what Isaiah is telling us is at some point here on Jerusalem, the Lord will invite not just the tribes of Israel, not just the tribe of Judah, the Jews, not just all the tribes of Israel, but all peoples will invited to take part in a banquet involving choice. I love the imagery. It just
Juicy
makes me,
food, even.
Yeah, not juicy fruit. That's a gum.
I meant food.
A feast of rich food and choice wines, juicy, rich food and pure choice wines. The Lord will invite all peoples to this feast involving juicy, rich food and pure choice wines. What does that perhaps remind you of, Renee? What's a banquet where there's the best, the most amazing food, including wine?
Usually
given
a
to
wedding
us?
feast. Is that what you're getting at?
No, but good try.
Bill, help me.
A banquet where people are eating.
I was going to say the royal fork. Is that it?
Gosh. So the Eucharist, the Mass is really where I was going.
Okay.
Guys.
We were way off. Sorry.
But the thing I want to emphasize, though, forget about the banquet for a minute. All peoples will be invited, not just the people of Judea, not just the Israelites, but all peoples. And then we fast forward to the gospel. Jesus is saying that the kingdom of heaven is like this whole parable that he gives where the servants are killed. Mm-hmm. So what's that talking about? Well, Time and time again in the Old Testament, the Lord sent prophets to his people, and they were mistreated. They were beat. So, that silly thing where the people were sent and they get beat up. Like, who beats up the wedding inviters? Exactly. The wedding. That's the technical term in the Hebrew. Wedding inviters.
This is going well.
Well, the Israelites did that.
Yes.
They did it all the time. And frankly, today, you and I, we don't always like it when there are people speaking prophetically to us, challenging us.
Right.
In fact, we may talk about that next week. Maybe.
Yes.
How we don't like it when people challenge us and afflict the comfortable, as they say. The same thing happened. That's what Jesus is talking about here. The prophets were often mistreated, some of them even killed by their fellow Israelites because they didn't like the message. So what's the Lord's response? Okay. This is the plan from the beginning. It's important to realize God's plan was to invite all peoples, but it's at this point that this is going to happen. I just want to underline one more thing about the parable. The king was enraged, and sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. He burned their city. What city might that be?
I'm afraid to
I know.
answer.
So just
Jerusalem?
Yes, yes, Johnny, we have a winner.
Come on.
Sorry, Bill.
Jerusalem was burned 40-ish years after Jesus died on the cross. So this is, in a sense, a foretelling of what would happen in Jerusalem.
Okay.
But more importantly, it's a foretelling of the opening of God's blessing, God's family, his people, to not just the nation of Israel, but to all nations. Again, the language of the first reading, Isaiah 25, all peoples, all nations, every face will be invited to this mountain. So Jerusalem is where salvation came from when Jesus died on the cross. That's where the first Mass was celebrated. That rich, choice food and wine was celebrated there. And now it's open for all peoples, Jews and Gentiles alike.
Thanks so much for explaining that, Dr. B.
You bet.